Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your meddling, battling, bickering, snickering hosts from the Nightmare Dimension.
I am John, and you feeling okay over there?
Sure, I'm feeling okay. Also, I'm CC, and this is the show where we review all the anime series from the previous season we did and didn't watch start to finish. The winter season express is pulling into the station, but before we can focus our attention on the shows from the cold months of the year, we still have to wrap up a few fall delights. Oddly enough, one of them has sunshine in the title, and that is the second core season, of Love Live Sunshine, which John will give his 2 cents on. Then we go to war over nothing less but the Holy Grail in our review of, by now it's not the newest anime entry in the Fate franchise anymore, but it was in fall, so there you go. It's Fate Apocrypha. And last but not least, we of course have to tell you our picks for the best anime of fall 2017. But before all of that, let's quickly talk about a few shows that didn't make the cut and were dropped by the wayside in the Chop and Drop. Very slim pickings for the Chop and Drop this time. I think we both stuck with most of the shows we were interested in.
I don't remember exactly how many shows you picked up, but I sort of stuck with most of what I watched.
Yeah.
I also picked up a smaller amount of shows.
But, yeah, why don't you tell us which shows couldn't hold your interest for their entire runtime, and why?
Two Car, it was a show about this variant of racing called Sidecar TT, and I thought, hey, this seems like a sort of interesting sort of thing that, I don't know any other anime about sidecar racing, so I thought, hey, I'll check this out. All the characters felt like carbon copies of each other, and I was like, I think I got maybe 6 episodes in, and I was like, so it's everyone telling the same story to everyone else for the whole series. Got it. And I just kind of walked away from it after that. So, what did you end up dropping this fall season?
Yeah, I dropped a few more, but most of them I already talked about, actually. The first one was Kino's Journey, and, the second one Just Because, and I talked about why I didn't continue to watch both of those shows in their respective reviews, is when you reviewed them. Yeah, and I think I made it pretty clear in the sneak peek why I wouldn't keep watching these either, so... there you go. So the other 2 things I rocked were Code Realize, that show about which get this kind of classical version of Arsène Lupin stealing away this girl that was trapped in her home by her father and everything, and that was based on an Otome visual novel, I think. Or a mobile game, I think, something like that. It just fell off the wagon. It was not like it was bad or anything. It's just, there were so many other shows to watch, and this, just from the setup alone, wasn't interesting enough to me, and I was like, oh, this is probably not going anywhere that interesting, so yeah, I didn't get back to it after its first episode. And the second one, I got a better reason for, maybe, is Black Clover, which I stuck for with 2 episodes. But then I couldn't tolerate the main character's voice any longer. I mean, I'm very forgiving when it comes to generic shonen, but not if it goes out of its way to be unpleasant to watch, or in this case, to listen to.
I love all of the image that went around of the show, like once asked that said, like, oh no, all I've been doing is running around and yelling. It's like,
exactly. And I mean, to be fair, Naruto has done the same thing in his, in the beginning, before he kind of grew up and started talking like a normal person. But even then, his voice actress had a better voice and was just, constantly yelling in the same fucking tone, and it's so irritating.
She had inflection.
Yeah, exactly. Also talent. Dishing out the fucking
listen to these
shade here. Yeah,
come and get your hot takes, everybody.
Oh yeah, the hottest takes. Only the hottest takes on a show that has Freeze in the title. Anyway, yeah, still. So this I just had to abandon. This was more irritating than Twin Star Exorcist. So and that's saying a lot. So it couldn't deliver anything special, but it delivered a lot of irritating stuff. So yeah, not for me. But yeah, the rest we stuck with, and I think, and you will get reviews of all those shows soon enough. In case some of you were wondering why we didn't talk about Food Wars Season 3 yet, that one already had a second core announced when we structured the order for the review for the season, so we decided to wait for that to air and wrap up so we got more to talk about.
Right.
Yeah, so that's going to happen. Don't worry, but we're going to wait for that second core to run its course, and then we have a few more episodes and developments to talk about, and I mean, yeah, that just made more sense. So yeah, anyway, let's switch over to reviews so that John can bring some sunshine into your lives.
All right, so it's idle time again.
Yay!
In what better way?
Isn't it always idle time, to be honest?
When isn't it? There's a new Idle Master game launching next week, so why not?
Sure.
Sorry, Rip Berserk.
I mean, hey, we finally got off the boat, so what do I have to complain about?
And I mean, it's a mobile/browser game, so it's not, well, then again, mobile games are time sinks. But regardless, today is not about the Idle Master. It's about Love Live Sunshine. As you know, we've said probably about 3 times now. You probably could have guessed. So this is the second half of the show. We talked about it, I believe, early last year when the first season aired. So we're just going to go over real brief the plot synopsis of the second season. The crux of this season has me. I have to go into a bit of spoilers to talk about some of my opinions on it, but I will try and give as much warning as I can. So, having decided to walk down a path separate from their inspirations as idols, the girls of Aqua are more determined than ever to shine brilliantly as school idols. With their previous performance marginally increasing the number of prospective students for their endangered school, they look to carry the momentum of their small step forward into the school's upcoming open house and the next Love Live competition. Hoping to use these events to bring more attention to their school, the 9 girls look to give their best performances yet. Unfortunately, these small steps forward are not enough to convince Marie's father from changing his plans. And undeterred by her daughter's plans for reconsideration, the decision to close down their school is made official, putting an end to the Uranohoshi Girls High School student recruitment, including the open house. Though all hope seems to be lost, the school idols refuse to give up, and faced with impossible odds, Aqua sings, dances, and shines in the hopes of bringing about a miracle. So I want to start off by saying that the first season of this show, and I said it when we talked about it last, but I feel like it bears repeating. The first season really lives in the shadow of the previous series. This one does not.
That's good. I assume. I mean, you were complaining about that. Some of the first season felt like a rehash.
Yeah, and this one, I'm going to get into that later on, why I feel exactly like that. But this season was a lot stronger and a lot more interesting and better written and whatnot. So, talk a little bit about some of the I'm going to change the order a bit here, talk about some of the staff first. Of course, the show is animated by Sunrise. We all know what they're famous for. Gundam, Code Geass, among hundreds of other things. So this show is directed by Kazuo Sakai, whose previous big directorial credit was a show called Mushi Uta, and he's done a lot of episode direction stuff on shows like Basilisk, Code Geass R2, Full Metal Panic, Gundam Build Fighters, yay Build Fighters, Gundam Age, and Utakata. So got a lot of good stuff under his belt. The composition and script is done by Juki Hanada, who's worked on stuff like Excel World, Beyond the Boundary, A Place Further Than the Universe, which, for the record, I can't wait to talk about. So please look forward to that. The anime adaptation of the game Robotics Notes, several parts of Rosen Maiden, apparently some of Seven Deadly Sins.
Mm-hmm. Which one? The good or the bad Seven Deadly Sins?
The good one, Nanatsu no Taizai. Speaking of other anime adaptations, Steins Gate, which I still haven't watched the anime, but I played through the game. My God, that game is so good. If you haven't played it, do it. Mm-hmm. And apparently the anime is really good as well. It's one of the few game-to-anime adaptations that's really good and really faithful to its source.
Mm-hmm. And
Sound Euphonium. So, we're sort of hitting on all cylinders for all of these things that I personally love. The music, there's two separate things to talk about the music, because the music, the interstitial stuff is done by Tatsuya Kato, who we've mentioned a whole bunch of times, especially in regard to Food Wars, among many other things. But I was looking up, some of the actual insert and main themes. A lot of them were written by this woman Aki Hata, who's done a ton of writing main themes for other shows like Aikatsu, Azumanga Daioh, Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, Lucky Star, Horizon, Saki, Super Robot Wars, The Inspector, and apparently she even had a hand in a whole bunch of video games like Snatcher, Dynamite Headdy, Rocket Knight Adventures, which is a personal favorite of mine, Contra Spirits, and Soul Edge. So the body of her work is far and wide. And it really, really shows, especially in the songs in the second season. The first season, I don't feel like the songs were bad, but there weren't as many that really stood out to me in the second season, because the show kind of comes out swinging with the new opening theme, the song called Our Future Selves Know, and it's it is immediate, and it's great, and it's wonderful, and I could probably list off about 10 or 12 songs in particular that I like across both series that I really enjoyed.
What series gets the bulk, though, of your favorite songs?
I actually kind of feel like I'm leaning more towards Sunshine now.
Okay.
One other thing I sort of mentioned last time we talked about this was the dance scenes about the CG.
Yeah.
I went back and rewatched some of the dance scenes from the original series. I want to slap myself in the face because, my God, the CG came a longer way than I realized.
Huh.
The characters actually look like who they're supposed to, and not generic doll faces. Ooh. And not low-ass frame rate, really bad animation.
Mm-hmm. How nice.
So I sort of feel like, I was probably pretty unfounded in saying a lot of what I did. Or it might have just be that they are able to blend it better this time around, so it felt more organic, and I feel like that's probably the case, and I'm just full of shit as usual. But yeah, this season of Sunshine was a lot stronger because of the fact that there was actual character development, and we got to see a lot of the characters change. You get to know each other a bit better, and not just we're going to Love Live because we can, and because the whole thing in the first season where they brought up Muse, and then conveniently they weren't around, so their hook for that seemed a bit strange and not too cohesive compared to what they are going for with this second half of the show. Let's get into the spoilerish part. If you haven't watched the show or you're interested in doing it, you should probably do it now. Watch all 24 episodes and then come back and listen to the rest of this podcast. Just pause it right here. Right, everyone who hasn't watched it is gone? Good. So, like we were saying, the crux of this season is that Marie's father says, he's on the board of educators that runs the Uranohoshi High School. And since, enrollment is down, the decision is handed down that, hey, we're going to close down the school and merge it with another one. And
yeah, I remember. That was the setup for the first season.
Yeah, that was also the setup for the first series as well.
Okay, yeah, well.
They, appeal to them, say, hey, what if we can get more people to sign up? Okay, you have to get at least 100 prospective new students. So, what's the best way to attract attention to your school in a world where school idols are a thing? Why not go to Love Live? So the girls go to Love Live. They draw enough attention to start getting prospective students, and they don't quite make it in time, but they appeal once again, just give us a little more time. So her father petitions Marie's father petitions the rest of the Board of Education for that. They give them a whopping 12 hours.
Wow.
Thanks.
How generous.
Yeah, right. So it comes down to the wire, and they're close, and they don't make it, which I was shocked by, because what is an idol story? It's a Cinderella story. It's about, everything will work out in the end.
Yeah, you expect
right?
them to come through and, hey, this will work out. Happy feelings.
Yeah. And that was maybe a little over halfway through this season. But it's one of those things where I was sitting there watching, I was like, they have so much time to walk this back, and I was afraid that's what they were going to do, and they didn't.
Nice. That's surprising.
Yeah, it's a bold decision for this sort of thing, for this sort of show. I mean, and I feel like, honestly, it was stronger for it, because what other way would there have been to distinguish it from the original show? We have these two functionally identical shows, but at least, this one has a better, much stronger ending. It's a lot more impactful and poignant, I think, because it's sort of like this is the end of this chapter, It just feels a lot more like they took the concept of the original and wanted to mature it in this way, that, these sorts of things don't last forever. But, the girls look to it, with their heads held high. And when the decision is handed down, they still go to Love Live to compete, but it's not for their initial goal. For now, they change it to be like, let's, our school might be gone, but let's make a name for it. Let's leave it in the history books. And they do.
Let's leave it in the memory of the people with our songs, I guess.
Right. And they do that, and it's great, and it's just really, really it's really, really strong. It's a lot more emotional than I was expecting.
Yeah, because it comes from a deeper place, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Or more sincere, because it feels more realistic, because, like you said, things don't always turn out like in the movies, quote unquote. So.
Right, exactly. And there's, these moments towards the end where you see them cleaning up everything in the classrooms and getting ready to close it down. And there's this one really, very strong emotional part where there's this bonfire in front of the school, and it's everyone, not just the 9 main characters, but everyone singing the ending theme, and it's really, really strong, man. It's super good.
Sounds like it really pulled at your heartstrings there.
A lot more than I was expecting.
Yeah, it's cool. It feels like it ends on a kind of bittersweet, melancholic note.
Oh yeah,
that leaves you still a bit of hopeful, but it's like, hey, you at some point you gotta say goodbye to your, or I don't know, necessarily your youth, but some of your past experiences and everything, and some that comes with growing up and everything. Not everything can stay the same, and the way you're used to it. And I mean, that's strong material.
Yeah, definitely. And it's because of that this show, I went from being sort of to, God damn, it was really good in the end. I'm just glad it was able to get out of its own shadow to be, something a bit more special than I was expecting.
So do you think that was the plan from the beginning, to let, that it would take this course, or did they, I don't know, course correct halfway through because people were complaining that it was too close to the original?
I mean, I did read some reviews of the first season after, just to see if other people felt the same. And I mean, yes, a lot of people were like, yeah, it feels like a retread. So maybe that was the swerve that they were going for. I don't know. I can't say what went through the heads of the people in the writing room.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some interviews that shed light on that, but yeah, I don't know either. Obviously. Yeah.
Maybe I'll try digging a little deeper on that, but I had a hard time turning stuff up, so might as well list out the songs that I really liked, because why the hell not?
Sure. With that kind of, with a show with that kind of subject matter, it's fitting.
Yeah, because, I mean, like I said, the first season, there was a few songs. There was Sky Blue, Jumping Heart. We've decided hand in hand. I'm going with translated names so I don't sound like a complete weeb, by the way. Feelings Become One, and rather than talk about our dreams, let's sing them. That's a great name, by the way. And then the second season, there was, like I said, the new opening theme, Our Future Selves Know. My Dance Tonight, Miracle Wave, which has probably the best dance scene in the second season, because we see glimpses of the girls throughout both seasons, training up and doing the choreography for their dances. And there's this one where Chica wants to do this triple backflip thing, and she's having this hard time doing it, and it's really difficult. And then when it comes for the time to actually do it on stage, she nails it, and everyone else is amazed. It's a really good scene. Other songs, there was Awaken the Power, Water Blue New World, Wonderful Stories, and another great name, Where Can You Find Courage in Your Heart?
Mm-hmm. So how many songs are there, in each given season?
Oh, there is a lot.
But not one new song each episode, right?
No. Probably every couple or every 3 episodes. But, they also have the albums with extra songs on them. They had the preview videos for between each and during each season, for hey, get hyped for the new show coming up sort of thing. So they would, make their own PV with a new song and a new dance to hype it up. Just because, hey, did you forget? It's an idol anime. I guess the note we can leave this on is that, yes, the first half of this show is weak in comparison. But if you have the patience to get through that, this second season definitely rewards that patience very, very much.
The Fate franchise has a long and storied history at this point. I've only been an occasional visitor so far, so I have to rely on John for fact-checking since he's the genuine Fate adept, I guess.
Well, as much as I can be. I mean, I'm exposing myself here. I still have not played the original game, and I would like to at some point, but I know fan patches and whatnot exist, but still kind of holding out hope that maybe someday there'll be an official English release. But
yeah, speaking of that, if I'm not mistaken, everything started with an adult game turned visual novel, a novel which you were just talking about, I believe, called Fate Stay Night, which was written by one Kinoko Nasu, developed by Type Moon Studios. And it's basically about the 7 incarnations of heroic spirits from our history called servants, summoned by 7 magicians called masters into our current time to fight for their masters in a giant battle royale. And the prize is nothing else but the Holy Grail. And in this case, it will not necessarily prolong your life, but that can also happen. But it will grant you a wish. It will grant a wish to each member of the winning team, to be specific. So that's the basic setup for kinda most of the Fate series things, though, there are changes here and there, and we'll get to that. But yeah, since then we had a plethora of follow-up games, novels, manga, anime, light novels, everything. Several spin-offs, which you have watched some of. I think you've watched all of the Prisma Ilia series, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there we go. We have alternate timeline, universe tales. Fate is fucking gigantic, and at this point it's really hard to grasp how it's all connected and what to even recommend as the perfect entry point for newcomers. But yeah, the first thing I got into contact with in the franchise was watching the first anime adaptation by Studio Dean. I don't know if that was your first experience too. I think so.
I'm going to tell you right now that I don't own a whole lot of DVDs, but I actually have that series on DVD right over here.
A questionable honor, because that series was of questionable quality.
Yeah, it really was.
Not only in the animation department, but mostly. Yeah, also weird wrap up. But yeah, that's I watched that. Back then noticed already its shortcomings, but I don't know, it was enticing. The setup alone was enticing. There were many interesting characters in that show. The original Saber and Archer. And yeah, those, Archer's famous quote, "I'm the bone of my sword," that, just has to stick with you in all of its English glory. And it did. And yeah, so I was like, hey, that's interesting. And I've checked out a few other series from the Type Moonverse since then, like Tsukihime and Garden of Sinners.
Wait, hold on. What show did you say in there? I think you talked about something that doesn't actually exist.
Right. I liked Tsukihime back when I watched it. I think I'm the only one. I certainly liked it. I remembered liking it more than Garden of Sinners, but it's been a very long time. Maybe if I rewatched it these days, I would hate it. I don't know.
Garden of Sinners is something I've been meaning to get to, because I sort of bounced off of Fate Grand Order because the grind in that game is insane, even amongst other mobile games. But when in the international version they had the Garden of Sinners event, they were like, hey, all the movies are on Crunchyroll now. Isn't that a coincidence? So I would like to actually go and watch those now that, you can in an easy, legal way. Yeah,
I don't know. It felt very convoluted, and there's a lot of exposition dumps with a lot of technobabble that I didn't appreciate in that show.
Yeah.
And it felt at times like it was trying to be convoluted for, being convoluted, just, for the sake of that. The rest, I don't know. That show just felt kind of fragmented to me, and I liked some parts of it, but definitely not all of them. And a lot of people said they liked how it came together at the end and the way it wrapped up, and that just, I didn't have that experience. It's just it didn't resonate with me that way, and by the end I was kind of underwhelmed, and I don't know. Yeah, I didn't like that series that much. But yeah, the next Fate thing I consumed was Fate Zero, the anime adaptation of a prequel manga to Fate Stay Night, written by one of my favorite anime writers, Gen Urobuchi. Yeah, he wrote Psycho-Pass and Madoka Magica. Two series I very much enjoyed. I think are fantastic. He also wrote Kamen Rider series, probably best Kamen Rider series out there at this point, at least story-wise. Also, it has a very dumb gimmick that was Kamen Rider Gaim. Enjoyed that too. And he wrote the Thunderbolt fantasy series. I couldn't get into that because Puppets, not my thing. But yeah, Fate Zero was fantastic. I loved Fate Zero. The visuals, the characters, the story, everything about that series were great. Pretty much from beginning to end, I was totally hooked. I think you also got a lot of love for that series.
It's probably my favorite of the Fate series so far, and I think that's the one that sort of cemented Ufotable as the Fate studio, or the main Fate studio, I should say.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I mean, that series just looked fantastic. The fights, the effect worked, everything, just amazing in that show. And it ended on a really strong note too, and not on a happy note. Jesus Christ, definitely not. But on a poignant one, and good stuff, really good stuff. Definitely, Fate Zero is definitely my favorite. Not to take away from the show we're going to talk about today, but Fate Zero is definitely my favorite entry in the franchise so far, without a doubt, and miles ahead of all the other entries. But after that came the new anime adaptation of Fate Stay Night, adapting a different route. First, Studio Dean, the visual novel had 3 routes, I believe. Fate, Unlimited Blade Works, and
Heaven's Feel.
Right, Heaven's Feel has been adapted recently as a movie. I haven't seen that yet, or I think the first part. I think it's going to be 2 parts or something.
I think it's supposed to be 3 parts.
Or that, right. So yeah, that's still happening. But yeah, the second anime series adaptation was adapting the Unlimited Blade Works route, which was more concentrating on the story of Archer and Rin, I think, while the Fate route, original one, was more concentrating on Shiro and Saber.
Hey, don't forget the Blade Works movie by Dean.
Yeah, that was also a thing that happened.
I've
forgotten everything about it.
I have not watched that one. When I was planning to, and then I was like, oh, Ufotable is going to be doing a Blade Works series on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the animation in this new adaptation was certainly a bazillion times better than in the Studio Dean version. The story was kind of mixed bag for me. It started pretty strong, in my opinion. But in the end, it just couldn't follow up on the great setup constructed by Fate Zero, I think. And at first I thought, hey, this feels different enough from the first adaptation because, they went for a different route, more other character focus and everything. And, some of the story paths changed up and what happens to some of the characters. And like I said, the build-up was pretty good. But the second part of that show was where it went downhill for me pretty fast. And I don't know, the finale was not, didn't feel that strong to me, and I don't know. I don't know, how did you feel about that second adaptation? I think you liked it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. I mean, I get
from beginning to end.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I get why you might have a few misgivings about it, but I don't know. I feel like as a whole, it was still pretty enjoyable.
One of my biggest misgivings is that Shinji survived.
Well, isn't that always a misgiving when he survives? Because it doesn't matter what timeline, it doesn't matter what universe, it doesn't matter what series or spin-off or subgenre, Shinji Mato is always a dick.
Yep. Well, here's hoping that he dies a horrible death in
Fate Extra.
In Fate Extra. I mean, I haven't watched past the first episode, so I don't know if that already has maybe happened. I hope so. Anyway, I'm gonna catch up on that soon, and then we'll see. Don't spoil me. Anyway,
I won't.
Yeah, but that's pretty much all the stuff that happened Fate animation wise for Fate. Like I said, there were the spin-offs with Prisma Ilia, which took some characters from Fate Stay Night and turned it into a magical girl anime pretty much. But I haven't checked that one out. So, but you vouch for it, right? It's pretty entertaining.
It's goofier, but it's fun. It's actually one of the few series that Silverlink will actually, do good work on.
Yeah, right. So lots of different entries in the franchise with varying quality. So I went into this newest entry with somewhat hopeful, but also wary attitude, especially since at this point the concept was starting to lose its freshness. So yeah, how do you make this Magician Heroic Spirits Battle Royale interesting again if it has already happened on screen several times? Well, it's actually kind of easy. You throw a bunch of the established rules overboard and get fucking crazy, which is what Fate Apocrypha did. By the way, there will probably be some spoilers in this review. I'll try to give you all a heads up when that happens, but be advised, just in case you don't want to know anything. But yeah, Fate Apocrypha, which is based on a light novel series, is about two clans of magicians duking it out, pretty much, each with their different reasons for engaging in the fight for the Holy Grail War. We got the red faction, led by Shiro Kotomina, and the black faction, led by Darnik Preston Igmilinia. That's a fucking name for the books.
That name, every time I hear, I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, it's a weird mixture of Yggdrasil and Melinia, but why couldn't they just stick with one of those?
So I don't know. Why couldn't you have chosen a name that actually rolls off the tongue? Because it's
Fuck it. We call it the Iggy Clan. That works. So the Iggy Clan. Anyway, now here's already is where Apocrypha already sets itself apart from the Fate series that came before it, at least anime-wise. So each side in Apocrypha summons 7 servants. So we have 14 as a whole, 2 of each class. So naturally there's lots more fighting to be had and a vastly extended cast. And also this is an alternate timeline, and the events of Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night did not occur in this world. As such, just from, the setup alone, this kind of makes it a good entry point, because you don't need to have pre-existing knowledge from what came before it. If you wanted to get into, like, say, make the first thing watch be the new Fate Stay Night adaptation, which takes some of the stuff that happens in Fate Zero and expects you to have watched that. That doesn't make it as easy. I still consider Fate Zero to be the best entry point just because it's the best fucking series in the franchise. Mm-hmm. But just from the setup alone, Fate Apocrypha is not the worst point to start at, just because it says, okay, that shit didn't happen. We are starting over. The Holy Grail War is an existing thing in this universe, and it has happened before, but all the other stuff that we've already done in the series, that didn't happen because it's in the timeline and everything. So yeah, we also got a new class called Ruler, which hasn't been used in the anime adaptations of the Fate series so far, I think. Mm. And yeah, none other than Jeanne d'Arc is incarnated in that class. Just taking over the body of a girl instead of being incarnated from her, I don't know, spirit form. She's supposed to be a neutral judge, but since some players in this game of chess, kind of don't play by the rules, she has to pick a side, multiple sides actually, once things get wacky. She's also kind of supposed to be the main character, along with a homunculus called Seek, who is initially brought to life as a tool for the Black faction, but who has a much bigger role to play in the fight than in the battle than just being simple cannon fodder, as it turns out. So yeah, John, why don't you tell us about some of the other characters?
Well, I mean, one of the things that they sort of issue in this series is that in all the other previous Fate series, one of the big cruxes is discovering who your opponent is, and that can obviously be discovered by what their fighting style is, what their weapon is and their tactics, and you could derive from that your X or Y class. And they sort of just said, nah, hey, screw that, we're just going to start throwing our true names around because why not?
No fucks given, right?
Yeah, just sort of right out the door, which sort of, I guess, helps expedite the process, but also removes a little bit of the mystery.
Yeah, it's a different approach. Just, the tone of the show in general is kind of pretty different from what came before it. It feels more like an action blockbuster than the other shows did.
Right. Yeah. I guess you could say that. Mm-hmm. I mean, what better place to start on a Fate series than talking about the servants? Because why not?
Yeah.
So
integral part.
Yes. So on the Yggdrasilia, on the black side. Fuck that name, dude.
The Iggy side.
Yes. You can call it Iggy. I'm going to keep calling it black side. Because why not?
Yeah, on the black faction side.
So on the black faction, we have the Saber Siegfried. We've got the archer Charon. The spelling of the name doesn't seem to agree with the way they were pronouncing it in the show. So
yeah, well,
that's Japanese for you.
Yep.
Sorry, everyone in Japan. That's a little bit of a blanket statement. That's not right of me to say. The Lancer of Black is Vlad III, and who we all know and love as Count Dracula.
Yes.
The rider is Astolfo. Caster is Solomon. Berserker is Frankenstein.
Uh-huh.
And the assassin is Jack.
One of my favorites.
Jack the Ripper.
Not Jack the Ripper, but Frankenstein. Nobody likes Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
I assume. I don't know, maybe she has her fans, but I didn't like it.
I'm sure she has her fans. But yes, Jack the Ripper is a girl, by the way. But, gender bending is not a new concept to the Fate series.
No, not at all.
Since the beginning.
The focus of the first two series, I would say, like the biggest servant is King Arthur, basically, but it's a girl. Saber is, the Saber class in Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night is inhabited by Arthur or Artoria. Artoria is her name, I think, in this show. And I
think the translation is starting to slowly shift towards Altria, which I'm not a fan of, but know.
Yeah, I like Artoria too more. But yeah, it's weird because gender is a very loose concept in that show, or it feels like it, because those characters, definitely looked like girls, dressed like girls, but they categorize themselves as he and king and not queen and everything because, that's what it is. And Astolfo is a boy in this show, and when you see him the first time, you don't assume that, but that's how it is. He's also great. He's one of the best characters in this show, definitely. Yeah, but what are some of the other servants in the show?
On the red side, we have Mordred as Saber. Mm-hmm. Archer is Atalanta. Lancer is Karna. The rider is Achilles. So, there are actually some familiar names in here. Some of these heroes, I had to look up, to be honest, because I wasn't super familiar with them.
Yeah.
Caster is William Shakespeare.
Yeah. Weird choice. But in the end, it kind of makes sense, especially when you consider how the story goes. But basically, each servant in the Fate franchise has like a special magical skill. Sometimes that relates to their weapons. Sometimes that relates to, I don't know, some magic trick they can perform. And I don't know, Shakespeare, I think, has, without taking too much away, he can spin the story in a certain way. And
I guess that would be fitting of a caster role. So
yeah,
but I mean, Fate Grand Order has also proven that servant classes are not hard and fast. Apparently, anyway, the red side Berserker is Spartacus, and the Assassin of Red is Semiramis.
Yeah, lots of colorful characters, and as usual with the Fate franchise, if you know anything about the historic figures or, the figures from fairy tales and folklore that they use, you will get much more out of the show because, just it's just fun to look at these weird wacky anime interpretations of these historical figures or, fairy tale figures and say, okay, that's what they did with that. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And I always appreciated it about the Fate franchise. In the first 2 series, like more to find out, who's that character, and make this more of a mystery. And in this one, like, oh, hey, here's this wacky version of Frankenstein. Just go with a giant electric hammer, and it's just wacky. It's fun. It's cool. Some neat designs there, and we spoke of Saber Class and Arthur being, the one in the previous series being the focus. And this time we got Mordred, which is, of course, Arthur's son from the legend. And also a girl, again, but very much different character. Much more forward. Arthur's Saber was much more reserved and cold and, good manners. And Mordred is just a fun, booze-loving, adventure-loving scamp. Very loud, very aggressive. Fights with cats. But yeah, she gets or he gets a great partner in Shishigo, who is a necromancer and becomes pretty much Mordred's master, or not pretty much becomes Mordred's master, summons him. And I first pegged them to be the main characters of the show, and they should have been.
Yeah, you get that initial feeling, don't you?
Yeah, they feel like titular characters. They, the first episode is pretty much about them and how Mordred is summoned by Shishigo and everything, and how he, enlists into the ranks of the Red faction and everything. And it feels like, okay, this is a setup for their journey, and the series might have profited from them actually being the main characters, because, to be honest, they are the most interesting ones, not just because they're the most fun, because they are, pretty much, Astolfo aside, but their dynamic is great, the way they talk to each other, the way they, immediately understand each other and can do, like, these amazing tag battles and work together is just a blast to watch. And every time those two were on screen, I had the best. I had the best time. And I think my only misgiving there would be that they are not, the main character of the story, because this story is more about Zeke and more about Jan. But they are not as interesting characters. They're more straightforward. I maybe would call them a bit generic and not as interesting. They're not bad characters per se, but I think, talking about that now, taking this away, because we were joking about going to war over this, which we are obviously not going to do because we are well-mannered people.
Are we?
We'll see. But John, you did not like this show.
No, I don't know why I didn't drop this show, to be honest, because I thought it was honestly really, really uninteresting and boring.
Okay.
I get that, they're trying to do something different with it, and I appreciate that, but so much of this, just for me anyway, just fell so flat.
I would say I can see where you're coming from, because, for example, there are a few slow points in the show. And like I said, I think it would profit it if it had more interesting main characters. And the focus would have been more on, on Mordred and on Shishigo. But just for me, aside from, the few slow moments in the show, there is barely, in my opinion, any unnecessary downtime. When things were in danger to get stale for me, for example, at the halfway point, all the rules get thrown overboard, servants become masters, the cards get reshuffled, new allegiances are forged. I really like the brisk pace of the show this time around. It felt like, okay, we're gonna structure this like a big brawl action blockbuster thing where there's almost a big Hallmark battle in every second episode, and if I can say anything about this show that maybe you will agree on, that a lot of the battles look really fantastic in this show. Not all of them. Okay, I get that you have had some misgiving, especially about the later ones, but I think there was some battles that even you appreciated.
Yeah, there were some that were pretty good. Like, without going into spoilers, there was one towards the end with a giant time stop. I think I can say that's safe enough to say without giving away what the crux of it is. But a lot of the rest of it, A1 needs to put in more effort. I honestly feel, because obviously they've been making the bulk of their money off of Sword Art. And, you know, when they get thrown these other side projects, it feels like they just sort of don't care. And I've said that when we talked about Lyrical Nanoha Vivid, like they just walked through that, and there was no point where that show looked good. And I don't feel like that's the case with Fate Apocrypha, but there's a lot of points where it was like, oh, what were you doing?
You know, I had some points where in the dialogue scenes and everything where stuff looked janky and you had like off models and everything, and which I expected because it's A1, like we already established. But aside from that, especially in the action department, I felt like this is the best show optics wise they have delivered in a while. Let's say since Erased, maybe. And I know it looks very loose at times. It feels like, hey, you got more blobs of colors than everything, but especially in those kind of kinetic battles, I can tolerate, I can accept this kind of, you know, this kind of loose pencil work and everything if it feels like there's some motion there, feels like I said, if it feels really kinetic and well directed, and that's how it felt to me. I thought the action direction was really strong. Like it always felt big. It always felt like there was a lot of great camera work, and I love great dynamic character work. And I thought there was a lot of that in that show, and that the battles pretty much always got me invested and interested, and even if it was between lesser characters, because a lot of those battles, in my opinion, look really good, albeit not, you know, super sharp at times.
Yeah, there were some parts where during some of the action sequences where it's like, oh, you know, this looks good. Why does this look like a sketchboard? Why? And that immediately was like, nope.
Yeah, and I don't know. At times, I really enjoyed those sketchboard scenes, as long as it's not all the action scenes, but sometimes okay, there's so much going on here that it feels like I don't know, this scene is coming alive, and it's there's so much thing happening that everything like blends together, but I can still kind of make out what's happening, and I don't know, that feels just like, together with the fucking sound editing, and that was also really strong in this show, like the explosions when stuff gets destroyed, when, you know, the servants use their special weapons, their noble phantasms, and shit explodes everywhere. My fucking surround system really got a lot of stuff to do with this show. I got some real enjoyment out of the sound work too. Good stuff. I just, you know, I can see why you might not like some, you know, the look in some parts of the show, but I really think that's some of A1's strongest work. Compared to other A1 stuff I've seen, 80% of Magi does, you know, look like the worst parts of fucking Apocrypha. And, you know, only, you know, 1 to 3 episodes look as amazing as some of those battle scenes, if at all. So, and I really enjoy that show. So A1 is, you know, like you said, the best stuff that they have produced is Sword Art Online, look-wise. And, pretty much the best stuff I've seen so far anyway. I mean, Alt Noir Zero good too. If there's one thing good thing you can say about that show.
And like we mentioned, Erased looked pretty good for the most part.
Yeah,
Too.
yeah, Erased too. Really solid work there as well. But yeah, I think action-wise, this show is a standout, especially in terms of direction. Like I really, 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 especially enjoyed the camera work. Yeah, the other thing that I can see where people might have trouble with is that a lot of the side characters, some servants and masters too, are getting the shaft in terms of character development, because there are just so goddamn many. I, for example, would have liked to see more from Frankenstein. I liked her story, the bit that we saw of it, and, the relation to her original mythos that everyone knows from the movies and everything. But, I would have liked her to be a more prominent character than she was, because, I thought she was really cool and fun and interesting.
Yeah, I thought the dynamic between her and Collis was really good, and I wish they had done more. Yeah,
that's again, that's probably the one thing that I would complain about in the show, is that they decided to give some of the characters that, are maybe the least interesting the most prominent roles.
Like Sieg and Jean.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, I like how Sieg and Jean's story wrapped up, and I think you didn't like that either. If I remember correctly, you hated the ending pretty much.
Oh my god, I thought the ending was the stupidest shit I've ever seen in any Fate series.
Okay, tell me why. I mean, spoilers, people, of course, when we talk about the ending now, but I want to hear John's thoughts on this.
Oh, the third magic is threatening to destroy the world. Guess I'll turn into a dragon and carry it to the other side of the world. What?
Yeah, here's the thing, though, and here comes into play, if you know more about the the origin of those characters and their stories, then sometimes you can get a bit more out of this. And Sieg turning into a dragon made total sense for me, actually. Because his story, his origin story from the Ring of the Nibelungs saga, in context of that, all of that kind of makes sense somewhat, because Fafnir, the dragon that Siegfried slays in that story, stole like this ultimate treasure in that tale, which in this universe, of course, would be the Holy Grail. And if he is the character who slayed that dragon and got this dragon power in that weird fantasy setting, and if Shakespeare wrote that fucking story, then, of course he would turn into the fucking dragon who steals the treasure and takes it somewhere where it's safe and where it can't be abused. And like I said, as always, it helps if you know some of the historic background and folklore, which in this case I kind of did, only loosely. I'm not super familiar with that story, but a bit. Learned about it a bit in school and everything. But yeah, knew enough about this to make it feel like it wasn't coming out of nowhere for me. And it also made for a nice, happy ending, which is not necessarily a staple of the Fate franchise, I think.
Oh, I'll just turn back from being a dragon into a human and live happily ever after with the Maiden of Orleans. Okay.
I like that. I really like. I like that those two got a happy ending. I needed that. I loved that, and Shakespeare was also happy about it.
What happens when you put together two stale pieces of white bread? You get a nothing sandwich.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. But just in terms of the overarching plot, it's like, these characters are not super interesting. But at least I can understand their motives. And they're not unsympathetic or anything. So I was glad that they got a happy ending. The one I would have liked most is if the story was about Shishir and Mordred. But then again, that story would never... probably wouldn't have had a happy ending. Not at all.
Yeah.
Everyone dies and stuff like that.
But just the same, the buddy cop, they basically had a buddy cop dynamic, like you said when the show started off.
Oh, yeah.
And that was great. That was awesome. And then it was like, where are they? Where are Mordred and Shishigo?
Yeah, a misplaced focus. I wonder, this is based on a light novel, so there are not different routes there. But, maybe we get a different interpretation one day where those two are the focus. I really hope that can happen.
I mean, I know there were some changes made from the original LN, like,
oh yeah, people were wondering about that, right? Or complaining because
I tried to do some research on it and I couldn't turn up a whole lot. But the one thing I know for sure is that Siegfried and Jean are supposed to meet up way later than they do in the show. So
okay, yeah, I wonder, was that that would have been a better choice to bring them together earlier if they had more interesting development with each other. Give them more time to make that happen and let their relationship grow. The problem is that they don't develop them over their initial, motives, I would say. I mean, okay, John obviously develops feeling for him, and that makes feelings for him, and doesn't want him to get involved in the war and everything again. She feels for him, and vice versa. That happens later, and so there is some development. It's just it's not going anywhere new or super interesting, and that's the main problem of this show. And, I've repeated it several times now, but it's like, yeah, there's so much cool stuff around this, but, the main core, the focus of the story, like the main two characters, their story is not that interesting. I liked how it wrapped up, maybe I'm the only one, but everything that comes before it with those two is just, shrug, okay. Yeah, those are two nice kids, they're all right. Can we go back to Shishigo and Mordred again, because they're really fun?
You know who I actually thought was kind of interesting? An interesting factoid about this is that this is this character's second Fate series appearance, and as the second appearance as their servant type to boot was Dracula.
Oh yeah, when did he appear before?
In Fate Extra. He was also a Lancer there.
Oh. So wait, is he going to be in the Fate Extra anime now?
I'm a couple episodes behind on that, so I don't know if they've gotten to that part yet, if they're going with the story I think they're going to, but maybe, I'm not sure. I sort of feel like it was interesting the way he was saying to Darnik, hey, don't use my noble phantasm. Because, Vlad III, his reputation precedes him for being, a very bloodthirsty, monstrous sort of guy, Count Dracula. And, I sort of felt like it was interesting that, he didn't want his noble phantasm to be used because that would expose that ugly side of him that he sort of wanted to keep hidden away. And I thought that was neat. And I feel like, maybe they could have done a little bit more, but, then Darnik decides to be a dick and,
Yeah, but very effective in the way that it's the second series in the same year that made me feel sorry for Dracula, the other being the Castlevania anime that also has Dracula as a tragic figure, which he was pretty much in here as well. Like you said, he fights for the black faction, and we're talking like there is a clear. We haven't made that clear. There isn't a clear definition who are the good guys and who are the bad guys in this war at the beginning. It seems like the black faction are the bad guys, but that's not clear cut, and stuff gets even more muddled later on. There are some people that you initially pack as that kind of character, and they might surprise you. There's one specific character I was really who I packed like this perfect total incompetent asshole, and who really turned around by the end. And that
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I also really appreciated that. I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see the character turning out this way. Great stuff, Vader Parker. Thanks. Caught me off guard. But yeah, also Dracula, tragic figure because, like you said, he doesn't want to use his noble phantasm. What else could it be than vampire powers, right? And he never wanted that power apparently, and he never wanted to use that, and he hates it. And yeah, for Darnik to use that, and it's just such a shitty move. It's such such a mean, sad scene. I mean, like I said, I felt really sorry for Dracula in that moment, and especially he was not being an asshole in the series. You would expect to be him, like he's the general of the black or the highest ranked servant on the black side, but he doesn't feel like he's a super arrogant asshole or anything. He just feels like a noble spirit or something.
Yeah, he's just there to help lead the other servants, and that again, that's interesting. That these two shows, this and Castlevania, made him out this way, because you always think of Dracula and I want to suck your blood sort of creature, yeah. But it's interesting to see the writing in other shows, sort of put that in its head a little bit. Yeah. Not in a way that, Dracula did nothing wrong, obviously, but,
Yeah. It's like, okay, we got, again, shame that the focus is too much on the characters that are not that interesting. They also wasted like 2 or 3 episodes on fucking Jack the Ripper, who nobody gives a shit about. They're just like, okay, really? Yeah, that's a sad character with a sad story. It's just also kind of annoying. But, yeah. But, you still got a lot of interesting side characters with a lot of interesting stories. You got Achilles and his sister, who has like this dynamic with Chiron, who was his teacher. And, you got different interesting character relations. It's just a shame that some of the characters don't stick around long enough to do something more interesting with that. Just because they have to move the plot along and have to get rid of some of the characters. What I like, though, is that even when some of the servants are killed, their masters still stick around, which didn't really happen in the previous Fate series. I think, if I remember correctly, once a servant was killed there, most of the masters, lost. I mean, they didn't completely exit from the series or anything, but they didn't, play really a part in the main story anymore. They maybe got an epilogue or something, but they weren't, that important to the story anymore. And I feel like in this series, at least some of the masters still have an integral part in where the story is going, and mounting, certain attacks and putting some plans into motion. And I appreciated that. It feels like, okay, these characters are not just in here to fight, but they're also, with their servants, but they're also in here for other stuff. And, that gives those characters a bit more development. And I just liked how this series handled some of its side characters, even though, like I said, some of them weren't long around, enough around for my taste, especially Frankenstein. Best girl? No, probably Mordred. I don't know. Hard to decide in this show.
Yeah, I mean, the overarching plot and the obvious main characters are a bit, but I do wish, there were more focus on the side characters from, more than there was. Like, even like, I don't even know how you would begin to do that differently or better. Because, I mean, I don't feel like an OVA or something would lend itself well to this sort of thing. Because, we know how everyone's fate turned out anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, some characters get nice wrap-up and epilogue here in the show, and of course not all of them, because, barely any of them survive. That's the way that fate goes. I don't know, maybe the light novels have enough different stuff in them to make them worthwhile checking out, or there's a manga adaptation too that's still running, I think. So yeah, maybe there's enough different stuff in there to give the story a new spin that makes it work a bit better, at least regarding its main plot. And, maybe shift the focus. I mean, it's hard to completely shift the focus to a different set of characters if the story is kind of built around another set of characters. I mean, you would have to completely, change some of the layouts of the battles and story developments to shift the focus to our favorite pair, to Shishigo and Mordred. But yeah, I don't know. I would just appreciate a fucking spin-off series, like 13-episode road trip series with those two. I watch the shit out of that, man. Like, that would be amazing. Just during the course of the series, it's like, while Fate Apocrypha happened, like, there was this 1 month span where nothing happened in the main plot, but Shishigo and fucking Mordred went around and on a great adventure and traveled through, I don't know, Europe, whatever. Make this a fun thing, like a Lupin-esque series. I don't know, something like that with those two characters as the mains. I would really appreciate that.
I mean, apparently,
I really like to see.
Apparently, the original writer Higashida did write a kind of sort of side story about Jack the Ripper, but yeah, but and this is something I just learned while I was looking it up. Apparently, the story ties into a canceled MMO.
Okay,
so maybe they could have used that to expound more details, but all the could've, should'ves, would'ves, and we'll never know at this point.
Yeah. But final word, I would say, on Apocrypha. If you approach this series as a big action thing with a lot of kick-ass battles, a cool, albeit a bit repetitive soundtrack, haven't really talked about that yet. I like the music in that show, but, you pretty much always get the same main theme kicking in when the battles start. But, aside from that, it was still a cool soundtrack. But also, also some nice character moments. I think if you go into the series with expecting this, I think it's not a bad Fate series to be your first one. It's not as clever or thoughtful as Fate Zero, not by a mile, and I don't think it's trying to be. Like I said, it feels more like, hey, this is just supposed to be a fun, wacky, colorful action ride, and, don't think about it too hard. While, Fate Zero had a lot to say and a lot of interesting stuff. I don't know so much about Fate Stay Night. I'm very torn on Nasu's writing and...
understandably so.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe that had some interesting stuff to say as well, but I've forgotten about it. But yeah, Fate Zero definitely went a lot deeper with its themes and, exploration of the whole setup and stuff, and the characters which were much more interesting and well written. But like I said, don't think Fate Apocrypha is trying to be that. It's just trying to be a fun action ROM for its most part. And, yeah, I don't know. If you want to get into the Fate franchise, you can start with this one, depending on what you want. If you want a kind of more meaningful, maybe a bit slower series that nonetheless has some cool action scenes, and, a really good plot, really good, well-written characters, check out Fate Zero. If you're just in it for the fucking effects firework, I would say check out this one, check out Fate Apocrypha. Both, in my opinion, are fun series. I know John sees it differently. He probably would never recommend Fate Apocrypha to anyone.
I guess if you don't know anything about Fate...
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay, that too. If you're a diehard Fate fan, you've probably seen it anyway. And maybe if you expect, the more traditional setup and stuff from Fate, then this is not for you. But yeah. If you want simple blockbuster action with a lot of cool fantasy interpretations of historic characters, maybe give this one a go. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think, John, you would probably recommend Fate Zero over everything, over this one or over everything. Other Fate
over this one and probably over the Dean series as well. To be honest.
Would you rank Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works, the new series, on the same level as Fate Zero, or?
I would probably put it maybe half to one step down from Fate Zero.
Okay. All right. So, if you can take anything from that, definitely watch Fate Zero. And if you want more light, fluffy, kind of dumb, but... sometimes, in my opinion, very enjoyable action ROM, you can also check out Fate Apocrypha. It's sure, it's not the shortest show, but I think it's yeah, it's got a pretty brisk pace, even though the story has not that much interesting to say. But I was never really bored when I watched the show. So I don't know. You can check out the first few episodes and decide whether you will end up on John's side of things or more on my side of things.
The right side or the wrong side.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
get the fuck out of here.
Oh, okay, fine.
No, it's all good. Opinions, man. It's all cool and good. So yeah, that is, I think, our 2 cents on Fate Apocrypha. But we're not quite done yet because it's time for Best of the Season. So yeah, best of the season. I think for you it was a bit easier than for me this time. John, why don't you tell us what won best of the season for you?
I was actually able to narrow it down to 2 shows this time around instead of, 5 last time?
Oh yeah, last season was brutal.
Yeah, I kind of threw this idea back and forth in my head a lot, but I feel like my favorite show for this season was probably Recovery of an MMO Junkie, even with the baggage that it initially brought along. Because, like we said the last time I mentioned it in a single breath, now you can enjoy it guilt-free.
Yes, exactly.
But it was so well written. It was so well written for what it was. The studio used their budget so smartly, and it was just I just really loved everything about it. It was a fun, relatable story with interesting characters, and I couldn't recommend it enough to someone who's looking for a rom-com aimed towards an older audience.
Sure sounded like it, and I might still go and check it out. I don't know. I'm not into rom-coms, but it sounded like this was at least more in the direction that I'm interested in than the usual high school rom-com stuff.
And it's also a slightly shorter series coming in at 10 episodes. So not a long watch. Speaking of which, my pick for best season, well, let's talk about the shows that, were actually contenders. I mean, there were quite a few. So one of the contenders was Blood Blockade Battlefront and Beyond, which was fun for me, but I ultimately liked the first season more than the second one. So I didn't feel like this would be up on the pedestal. I don't know how you... Was that was that your other contender, John? I had thought about that, but I think... I don't know if I agree that the first season was better than the second season, if one was better than the other, really, because I did enjoy both of them.
They were very different
in
feeling.
Yeah, I enjoyed both of them for different reasons. But my other contender, because I needed something to elicit a very powerful emotional response out of myself, was Love Live Sunshine.
Hey, there you go.
So, because... I guess I shouldn't be afraid to admit that I cried like a little bitch during several moments in the show. So
that's all right. That's good. I'm always glad when a show manages to call out big emotions from people. So I'm glad that Love Live Sunshine managed to do that. So yeah, all right. But Blood Blockade Battlefront, like I said, enjoyed the first season more. The next contender, of course, like you just heard, I really enjoyed Fate Apocrypha. That would also might have been a choice. But more of a light, fun action rom. Couldn't stand up to the other 2 things that I had picked out. So it had to be decided between Land of the Lustrous and Girls Last Tour. Before this recording, I still wasn't really sure which one I would have picked. So I'm going to decide right now. I think I'm going to go with the same reasoning I used when going with Recreators over Made in Abyss, which is, I think both series deserve to be at the top, but Land of the Lustrous will probably get a second season, so it has another chance to win. And I think what I like most about the show was the potential of where it might still go. If this show would stand on its own it would not be enough for me. Like, but I can see where it goes and what it might do, and that is even more interesting to me than what the show already did with the episodes it aired. Mm-hmm. So for now, yeah, I'll pick Girls Last Tour for best of the season. A great self-contained slice of life story that has some interesting things to say with two super sympathetic main characters, a lot of heart and sorrow and hope. I told you in the previous episode why I love that show, so I won't repeat it here, but it's not a long series, just like Recovery of an MMO Junkie. Go watch it. It's great stuff. That's all I can say about it for now. If you want to hear more and why I picked it, go back to the previous episode, to episode 47, and check out my review of Girls Last Tour. Anyway, that's it for fall season 2017. We'll see you in a few weeks with our sneak peek for spring and our first review for winter. Until then, stay frosty, sunny. I don't know.
Yeah, don't let the snow get you down. It's 3 days into spring, man, as of this recording.
Just do whatever floats your boat and stay fresh, I guess. We'll see you guys in a few weeks. And that is a wrap on the 48th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to vit.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for some interesting articles linked in our episode release posts. Follow us on Twitter at AnimeBrainFreeze. We tweet regular updates and fun anime-related stuff there. Leave us comments and questions on Facebook and our YouTube channel, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next show. Macht's gut.
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze,
we travel into a rich fantasy world to watch a beauty discover her own worth and the love for a beast that must learn to become human.